here in 1978. There were 25,000 approximate residents of Coral Springs. And we were a developing city. We ultimately got to a point where we were considered a city of excellence. And that actually used to be our slogan, City of Excellence. And we actually got to the point where our bond rating became AAA because of the way we ran a city with excellence, both in finance, but our crime, our schools, our education system was all considered the best. And that's why we all moved here. You know, my kids were this big when I first moved here. They were babies, and now I have 3 grandchildren. So why am I running? Well, community leaders like David, when Roy Gold decided to withdraw, and I still don't know why Roy decided to withdraw, and I really felt Roy would have been a very good candidate to take back the mayor. They came to me and said, listen, we as citizens feel the city is not going in the right direction. And I sat down with them and I started looking at some things. And the first thing that hit me as a citizen was when I read that the city of Coral Springs decided to spend $70,000 of your dollars to give to somebody up in Tennessee to come up with a phrase or a slogan called everything under the sun. Now, if you want to look outside right now, I don't think everything under the sun actually applies to the city of Coral Springs today. That perturbed me a little bit. But it wasn't enough to get me engaged. Then I started looking at the city and I started seeing some things that really concerned me as far as the way we were spending your tax dollars. I don't know if you noticed that we now have 2 new signs or entranceway edifices that cost about $1.3 million. These are your tax dollars. Then I got engaged a little bit more, and there's no doubt that I do believe we do need a new city hall. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. But the problem we got is we don't build a Taj Mahal to replace the city hall. And I did a little bit of investigating in that, and I found out that one of my good friends, Barbara Miller, actually represented an architect that a couple of years ago was asked by a prior city commission that was more concerned about not spending your money, that engaged this fellow to come up with some plans and specs to redo the present city hall so that it would be acceptable under ADA, would be acceptable for us to do government. You know what the cost was? $1.8 million to $3 million. They were going to go up on the present city hall. They were going to make it ADA compliant. They were going to make it something that we would be proud of as citizens. And then, and something that I know you guys understand a little bit about finance, but the way they were doing it amazes me. We have this election cycle a general obligation bond that we're going to be asked to vote on for about $12 million. And the general obligation bond that they're asking us as citizens to vote on deal with our public safety. They're going to rebuild 2 firehouses. They're going to upgrade our 911 system out of the antiquated system that it is now to bring it up into the 21st century, which is another issue that we're going to talk about because the county already has that, and Coral Springs for some reason has decided they're going to stay by their own. And I haven't got into that issue, and I'm not going to get into it in great detail tonight. But that was a general obligation bond. Now, as Matthew told you, one of the things that I think I've developed a reputation is as a communicator, as a problem solver, and as someone who can get people who have different opinions to sit down and try to come out using common sense to come up with the best resolution of a problem. And when you look at the City Hall, you ask yourself, why are they going to spend $28 million? And by the way, they keep yelling at Howard, they keep saying it's only $23 million. Well, actually it's $23 million for the City Hall building, but it's $5 million for parking garage. Then came June of this year, and the nail, that was the nail that really struck me. When the bond grading for the city went down one level. Now, you don't know what the bond rating means. A AAA means you get favorable rates. By going down one level, it means there's probably going to be, the next time you got to borrow, 5 basis points. That's a significant sum of money on a $28 million debt. It's probably around $10,000 a month. And it's going to be a 30-year debt. And start thinking about that. And I said, why are you not concerned? Because the headline in the Sun Sentinel was, the commission is not concerned with the downgrade. Now, if I was a mayor, if I was a commissioner, as Howard wants to be, it would be my response saying, how did this happen? And when I read about Moodys' downgrade, it said that Coral Springs is getting into some problems with their financing, some problems with their debt, and we have to somehow fix that problem. So, I said to myself, if these guys don't really care, why are they doing this building, this Taj Mahal, using general revenue bonds? Now, let me tell you what the significance of general revenue bonds is. General revenue bonds is non-ad valorem tax money. That's what we use to build parks and to do other programs. So by using a financing method, using general revenue bonds, you're taking away from those potential problems in the city and spending a lot of money on a city hall that we need, but we don't need a Taj Mahal. And I said to myself, why would they do that? And the answer was quite simple. They don't want the voters to vote on whether or not we're going to build a Taj Mahal or whether or not we're going to build a city hall that we can afford. We have a piece of property over at Mullins Park that was pretty much dedicated to be a city hall. Now understand, you got the public safety right there, you got the park. I said to myself, has anybody ever thought about taking the property on sample, selling it, and using that money, and by the way, that's a significant good piece of property, selling it and using that money as seed money to build a new city hall over there by Mullins Park. It's not taking park property. I want you to understand that. It's using property that was dedicated for it at a place where most of our citizens go to do government, to have public safety. Then I heard about my partner, my law partner is Mike Ryan, who's mayor of Sunrise. And Mike told me that Coral Springs has a problem with SRO officers. Because we don't have an SRO officer in every school in Coral Springs. Some of them actually probably need 2. They're just not willing to pay for them. The county's SRO officer is a police officer who is on school property. Now, if you didn't hear yesterday, 6 of our children at Sawgrass Middle School took some medication. Now, cops are not there necessarily to be a cop. The cops are there so kids learn what police officers are about. They become mentors. They're actually there for kids who have problems. One of the big things that Howard has found, and I have found, and Joy Carter has found, is that although we talk about the crime rates decreasing in Coral Springs, one crime statistic that bothers me tremendously is a big spike in domestic violence. Now, let me tell you folks, domestic violence in the last 2 weeks has become a huge issue. And I believe very strongly that domestic violence occurs more often than not. But I think people are afraid because we don't have enough good, competent police officers to try to deal with the problems. And I think Coral Springs has an obligation to address this problem, to publicize this problem, to let the public know that we are going to address it and we are not going to accept domestic violence at all in this city. This is something which we really have to work for. It's important that you understand that there are issues. And then I started watching TV, and actually went to a couple of commission meetings, and I was surprised at the arrogance of the city commissioners. They would have, when they have this little time period where the citizens will come up and say what they want to say, and I was shocked at the disrespect that they had for the citizens of Coral Springs. I mean, if you would see it, you would be ashamed. And then last week when Commissioner Powers said, I don't care what any of these people say when they come up here, I'm only considering what staff says. Mayor, commissioners are your representatives. They have the obligation to set the priorities of government for you. They have the obligation to set the financial priorities for you. And for anybody to think that they can spend your money without any responsibility to the citizens, they're wrong. So when Dave and other people came to me and said, will you run? I said, you know, why would I want to run? And they said, because we need somebody that has leadership capabilities, and I think that I've demonstrated it for the 10 years I was in the state Senate. As Matthew told you, I was a Democrat in a Republican-controlled Senate. I was 14 out of 40. And the Senate President, who was a very good friend of mine, John McKay, called me. I was up in Maine, and he says, I'm making you a chairman. And I thought he was going to make me a chairman of Judiciary because I'm a lawyer. And he says, no, I'm making you chair of Finance and Tax. I can't tell you what a significant committee that is. So for 2 years I was chairman under the Republican-controlled legislature of Finance and Tax. And then when the next Senate President came in and said, I'm going to make you president of the chairman of regulated industries. That is a committee that controls all of the gaming, and they call that the SIN committee. Because you have to make sure that the pari-mutuels, that the dog tracks, that the horse tracks, that the gambling facilities are being run properly and with state regulation. That was a significant committee. And then when the last Senate President, Tom Lee, called me and said, listen, Skip, we got problems with children and families in the state of Florida. I want you to become chairman of Children and Families. And I said to him, Tom, why would you want me to do that? And he said, because you have the ability to understand some of these issues and to attack them. The things that we attacked were foster care and the use of psychotropic medications. I could not believe that some of our children, the 1-year-olds, the 2-year-olds, were being taken away from families, and they probably should have. They had emotional problems. So what did the state of Florida do? They medicated them. They medicated them until they became zombies. And there was no control by the state of Florida. We fixed that problem. I passed over 100 bills in the legislature, more than any other senator during my time period. I believe I have the skills, I think I have the capabilities of being your mayor. Now the only way to get there, because I got into this thing real late, folks, is if you go out and talk to some of your friends. I had yesterday a nice young lady who is the wife of one of our rabbis, who wrote a letter on her computer, and she sent it to me and said, can I send this to my friends? And this lady is a very influential lady in our city. And it was being sent to all of her parishioners, and it was being sent to all of her friends, where she actually came out and said, we in Coral Springs need new leadership. And she said, do I have your permission to do it? I says, Lori, you don't have to ask my permission. Let's just get it done. And she said, why don't you ask other people to do the same thing? And that's how you get elected. There's no way I could do what I did first time. I knocked on 25,811 doors. I actually saved 2 lives. I was a lot younger then, and it was not as hot then. And I had 1 year and 2 months to do it. Yes, I am knocking on some doors, but the way to communicate is to have people communicate. So I ask you, please consider me for the mayor's job, and to do contact your friends, contact your neighbors, other people that live here, and tell them about Howard, Joy, myself, and whoever else you feel should be supported by the citizens of Coral Springs.